Tommy.
Hey, it's St. Patrick's Day.
Top of the morning to you.
We should go to an Irish pub in Philly for no other reason than to make the intro make sense.
Yeah, Patty's Irish Pub. There's no other pub in Philadelphia we should be going to.
Isn't that the pub from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
It is, and that's what we're talking about today.
On Can We Talk About?
There's this waitress that Charlie's in love with, and I banged her. Charlie got really upset when I banged the waitress, but it was a lot of fun. She was a nice piece of ass.
We don't know who you're talking about.
Charlie, he's my buddy. We sleep together. We hang out together. Once I pooped in the bed. I blamed it on him. One time the guys got hooked on crack. It was really crazy. Well, they found a baby in a dumpster. They wanted to make some money with the baby, but nobody would buy the baby because it was white. They sort of had to turn it brown. We were fighting over the sword, and just about when we were about to hit each other with the sword, social services came in. We thought we were killing the baby.
I don't understand this talk.
Charlie wrote this musical. Oh, man, it was really funny. I play a troll on the musical.
Troll?
Yeah, and it's called The Nightman Cometh. I can sing you my song if you like. You gotta pay the troll toll to get into this boy's hole. Yeah, I kept saying, but you had to pay to get in. I was saying soul. He was saying, he thought I was saying boy's hole. One of the things I like doing most is banging whores. I go out and bang a lot of whores. Yeah.
Can we talk about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I mean, I don't know how we haven't yet. This was probably the one most requested to me by other people for us to do.
Really?
This, I would say, of course, tied with The Office, but yeah, this one for sure. It's such a cult following.
Is it? I mean, all right, okay, we can get right into it.
Let's do it.
No. I mean, first off, before I say
Okay.
that, because I feel like my tone was weird there. I love this show, but to the end of the earth, right? But it's also, is it the longest running sitcom of all time now? What's the?
Yes, I believe it is.
Is that what it is?
I believe it is. Yeah.
So can we really call it like a cult? Anything when it's like, you know?
That's fair, but I also think maybe it's one of those shows where people are finding it. You know what I mean? Like we've talked about that with a lot of the shows that we've covered, where that push of streaming has helped people like fall into a show that they didn't start from the beginning. You want to talk about a show that when you're like, I'll start watching Always Sunny, it feels like when you look at the amount of episodes, let me just block off the next 3 to 5 years of my life to catch up on the show.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe the people are finding it, but also it's so rewatchable. Like there's no beautiful character arc. I mean, like we can just get into it. It's not. These people don't get better. They're the pieces of shit of the earth, and they just stay pieces of shit. And that's incredible.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, too, I mean, I think what's interesting about the show in general is like they started off with a certain vibe in like the first, I want to say like, let's call it 3 seasons. And then somewhere in there, Danny DeVito joined the cast.
That's second season, right?
I'll check it as we're
okay. I believe it's
this.
second season. I believe I did check this.
Yes. Okay. You are right. You are correct. And I think they found their footing because even when you go back to it now, I mean, it has like, what is it? 15, 16 seasons now. Where are we at? As
Every
of
the seasons.
Today?
I don't know.
15 seasons. They're filming 16 as we speak here. But what's interesting too is like even that first season with Frank Reynolds, and then we should start in the beginning again, but in the beginning with Frank Reynolds, like he hasn't formed into Frank yet, like really in that first, but you know, it takes about a season for him to become Frank, I think. I
agree. I think there was just such excitement about Danny DeVito being part of the cast that it was like no one cared if he became Frank yet. Like no one was really, they were just like, holy, how is Danny DeVito on this show right now? I didn't watch it from day one. Did you?
Yeah. No, I picked it up.
I came in about season 3, I think.
I think so too. And a friend of mine bought me the DVD And that's how I got into it. And which is funny too.
So
you know me, like I'm the kind of person who's like, I'm in from day one. Like this is one that I had missed. And then I knew about it, but I'm a pessimist when it comes there too, where I was just like, love Danny DeVito. Who doesn't? But at the same time, I was like, oh, is this like stunt casting where they're just trying to like, which it really kind of was, but it happened to work, which was, and I guess, do you know the story about how Danny DeVito got onto the show? Like
so
how he landed?
I did look it up when we had first talked about doing this, and I think my facts might be a little off, but it was kind of like didn't they say that they wanted a big name attached to it for it to continue?
Well, FX did. The network did. Yeah. And John Landgraf, who his name tends to pop up a lot in the kind of stuff I watch and things, because he is sort of instrumental in a lot of, if you look now and you look back, FX has had a lot of groundbreaking shows, like especially on like the drama side. If you go way back, you think like The Shield, Nip Tuck, Rescue Me, like there's a lot of those shows that, especially on that, plateau or that kind of genre, were huge at that time. And it was like stuff you didn't see on network television. And John Landgraf was the president of the network. He was the one who got It's Always Sunny, on the air, but he had previously worked with Danny DeVito at Danny DeVito's company, Jersey Films, and then left Jersey Films to go to FX, and then sent Danny DeVito a VHS copy of the show and said, you have to check this out. And that was it. It was just, you have to check this out. And Danny loved it. And then John Landgraf would like, well, would you be on the show? And then met the guys from the show at a lunch. And then that was it. The history from there. But his whole thing too was it had to be like his introduction to the cast or his involvement in the show had to be organic. It couldn't just be like shoehorning. They have a new friend they found. Like they needed it to be something, and something I never even realized. He constantly says, Dan DeVito, especially in the early seasons, that his wife was a whore, right? His wife was a whore. I can't do it like Dan DeVito does it. There's a certain like way he says it. But anyway, I didn't ever realize, and I heard him in an interview explaining it. It's like both, Dennis and Dee are both tall blondes. And so he's like, that was the genesis for that. It's like, my wife's a whore. Look at my kids. They look nothing like me.
They're
like,
right. They're clearly
the
not
tennis
my kids.
instructor's kids. Yeah. So, which I was like, oh shit, I never realized that. I never paid enough attention. But yeah. And honestly, he's infamous now. I think all the tattoos and stuff people have from the show are all just like, different
his face
characters. Yeah. His face or his characters that his character has. Do you remember all the names or?
Oh my God, no. That's like one of those like trivia questions. If you ever are doing a bar trivia and they ask you for all of Dan DeVito's characters' names in the show and you get it.
Yeah.
Bow down. Bow down.
But anyway, we should back up because we just like went head first and was just like, how much I love Dan DeVito.
We always do.
I know. We get too excited. But do you well, I guess more fun facts, which you're the fun fact person.
I am
I'm stealing your thunder.
Thanks.
Do you know the genesis for how the show was created and like what the original pilot was supposed to be and all that backstory?
Well, I remember listening to Robin McElhaney on another podcast, not their podcast, but he was a guest on another podcast. And then Charlie Day kind of came on and said the same thing, but just how they shot that first pilot episode with his own video camera, cost $100 to shoot.
Yeah.
And $100 was just him spending money on pizza to buy everybody that was in the episode food for the day. Yeah. And I remember hearing that story, but I don't remember the whole genesis of how the show started. But you probably know that a lot better than I do.
Yeah. They were and this is something I had just learned in doing some notes on this, but apparently they all met. Well, Charlie, Glenn, and Rob all met doing while auditioning for the movie Tuck Everlasting. Do you remember that movie?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. And then I believe it was Rob who was sort of like the point person and kind of putting together this pilot. The whole concept was that they were struggling actors living in LA, right? Which is very meta for what they were going through.
Of course.
And then they sent it off as like a tape to FX, and then, history was made from there, obviously. But it was FX who was just like, gave the idea of like, get it out of LA, put it someplace else, which they chose Philadelphia because that's where some of them were from. And then history from there. But so that's where it like changes settings and changes their backstories, but otherwise keeps the content or the personalities of the characters for the most part. But even the personalities sort of, evolved over time, and you get like a, better sense of who they are. And they're just, you can't not like them. So
you can't. And it's so funny because I have a buddy of mine that I used to work with. I just saw him a couple weekends ago, and I was like, any suggestions for the podcast? Because I know he listens. And he's like, all I got to say is do Always Sunny. And I was like, oh, we're going to do it. And he was like, and I said, what do you want to talk about? And he just said kind of what we said before, that just how they're like the worst of society. And that's what makes the show so good. It's just, they're the absolute worst type of people in society who make you'd think you'd hate them. Yeah. But it's done so well that you love them. It's like endearing how shitty they are.
Well, what's funny about it too is it was previously, it used to be compared, especially in the early years, and now I think it's moved beyond that. But it used to be compared to Seinfeld in that vein, where like if you really look at it or pay attention, like the characters of Seinfeld are not redeemable characters. They're all mean people, and famously, which we have to do an episode on Seinfeld. I love that show. But the final episode of that show was calling them out on that, right? It was bringing all these characters back from their entire, like all the seasons of the show, and lining them up to be like, these are terrible people. They're, self-absorbed, and they ridicule people. Like, their neuroses was like put onto other people. Like people were deported or lost their jobs or all these other things because of them. And so I think, I think it's fair to say you don't have It's Always Sunny if you don't have Seinfeld, because I think that's there's some inspiration there, clearly, but they took it to an entirely other level. But now, if you look back and sort of compare It's Always Sunny in its prime to Seinfeld in its prime, they're very, very different. And the characters are like
absolutely
well-oiled in that aspect. I mean, at least the characters in Seinfeld had jobs for the most part, and like regular, normal
careers,
lives,
and apartments. Yeah. I mean, this is just like a bunch of alcoholic, narcissistic sociopaths that just are existing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can't imagine Philadelphia not being the backdrop for the show. There is something about South Philly just feels. It feels dirty, just like the show. Not that South Philly is, but the way that they portray South Philly is dirty.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And for what it's worth, because I want to get all the way. We can't talk about the other characters and like the like their bench. They don't have a very deep bench, but I love all the characters around inside this world. But before we even get there, I feel like we
got to do the gang.
We got to do the gang. So who's your favorite out of the gang? We'll start there. Unless it's other than Frank.
I was just going to say, I believe we've touched on that.
We've touched on
I probably D, but I also, I mean, as far as female comedians in a sitcom go, she's just killer, man. She's nuts.
Oh, absolutely.
She's just, I mean, her as an actress, of course, she's fantastic.
Yeah.
But her, I don't know. Caitlin Olsen always just has like a look about her. She's like on the verge of being really hot, but can also play white trash simultaneously.
Yeah.
And just like always teeters that line. And her comedy is so perfect for that role.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think probably
I got to tell you, I don't know if you ever saw it, but she had her own show a couple years ago on Fox that was hilarious. And it was some of the same writers from It's Always Sunny who went off to do that. It was on Fox. It was called The Mick. And I cannot tell you like this. I
think I watched an episode of that.
So great. Such a great show.
Something to do with rich people.
Yeah. I mean, the entire, the premise of that show.
I think I watched the pilot.
Yeah. The premise of that show is like, she's just like, basically D from It's Always Sunny. And then she has a sister who married into like with a rich husband and stuff. And they have 2 spoiled brat kids. And her sister and the husband sort of vanish because they're running from the law.
Yes, I totally watched a couple episodes of this. Yeah, that was very funny.
Great show. Honestly, it is an atrocity that Fox canceled that show as early as it did. That show was hilarious. Everything was amazing. That she deserved that show. And then ironically enough, because Glenn Howerton, who plays Dennis, went off to go film his side project around the same time, which was AP Bio, which lasted a few seasons. I think it lasted 4 seasons.
I didn't watch that one.
But yeah, the Mick was hilarious and absolutely deserved.
Who's your favorite then? We're taking Danny off the table. He's off the table.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. I'm gonna throw a curveball here. Charlie is fun and silly, and I like Charlie, but Rob
McElhenney.
Yes, thank you.
Gotcha.
Just the way he like threw himself into his role, the Fat Mac season, which we have to talk about in a bit.
It's so
like
good.
So great. Behind the scenes, clearly, like he is a force. Like he is the one of the driver behind the show. If not, it's a team effort, but like he is amazing at what he does. But as a character, he's hilarious. Like and again, like the season that he became Fat Mac was probably one of my favorites.
His calorie content that he was eating every single day to become fat, it's like insane. He went from like 150 pounds to 212.
Insane.
Something like that.
For what it's worth, he gained 60 pounds and he became a diabetic.
Yeah.
Because of it. But what's funny about it too is, and this is where I give him so much credit, right? Because what was that, season 7 of the show?
Yeah, I think so.
They looked at other shows like Seinfeld, like Friends, and all these other like typical sitcoms, and were like, you never notice as like the cast gets older, but they also now suddenly have a lot more money, especially as seasons go. They all look nicer. They all look better.
Yeah.
Counter to like what their characters might be experiencing. So his idea was like, screw it. I'm going to do the opposite of what these shows do. And I'm going to become like, look worse, But
That's
even
funny.
the way they tackle it.
Your favorite is married to my favorite in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. Which the fact that they're married is hilarious. And especially because like on the show, if you're aware of that or conscious of it and you're watching and like their interactions between each other are sort of funnier because of how much they hate each other and dislike each other on the show.
Oh yeah. Their real kid is the kid that Dee wheels out in the hospital holding. That's their actual child.
Oh, is it really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Which, by the way, I got to tell you, I'll jump right there. We have to finish this up, but I'll get around there. We have so much to talk about, but that is easily my favorite season of the show.
Really?
Yeah. Was that season 4, I believe, if I nailed it down right, but I got to go back and check.
I think so. I think it's the season of my favorite episode as well.
Yeah, we'll get there, but I think, or maybe it's not season 4. Anyway, we'll get there. I gotta pull up
to the gang.
Yeah,
back to the gang.
So that leaves 2 that apparently we don't love as much. But I would normally on a regular day say Charlie, but I think I have an appreciation for how much Rob throws himself into his character and
that's fair.
Messes around with it. Not to take anything away from Charlie Day. Charlie Day, clearly funny, but and some of the most quotable stuff. The what is the spaghetti policy? Like I that episode and those things. Like I just quote him all the time. And his fascination with bird law and cats and all these other things. Just you can't.
Incredible.
He's lovable, right? And he loves paint. Huffing it.
Huffing paint.
Clear, yes.
I just feel like, so like to wrap it up, obviously we have Charlie Day plays Charlie Kelly, who's essentially the janitor of the bar. And then you have Dee Reynolds, played by Caitlin Olsen, who's a struggling actress and works as a waitress. And then Rob McElhenney's character is supposed to be the bouncer. I just love how that they have these jobs, but like it doesn't mean anything. The only thing maybe is like Dennis Reynolds played, Glenn Howerton is the bartender.
Yeah.
Like he bartends. So we
Yeah.
get that part. But it's just so funny that in the descriptions they have like jobs. I'm like, you don't seem to do anything. They exist.
Yeah. And every
In
once in a while
Patty's
it comes
Irish
up.
pub. Yes.
Yeah. It's hard to follow, but Charlie has some stake in the bar, but then apparently he sold it for like something like, like a cracker or something, whatever it is, like weird stuff. But like there is like stories behind where all the characters lay and their association to the bar and life and everything. But
and this premiered 2005.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
In August. Yeah. So many years. I mean, we're up to season 16, but
that is insane.
Yeah, it is insane. And then there's Dennis,
And there's our boy.
May or may not be a serial killer. He has borderline personality disorder. And then for what it's worth, he is the only person who sort of almost left the show because, again, I mentioned before, he was doing AP Bio, which was a sitcom on NBC at the time, before it was canceled from NBC, and then Hulu picked up, I think, it for like another season or two.
I didn't. Did you watch it? I did not.
I watched like a few episodes here and there. It was funny. Like I did like the show. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't love it to the point where I had to watch it. The Mick, though, I watched every episode of that show, and I highly recommend it still.
Okay, I'll finish it because I did watch the first couple episodes just because I love her. So
yeah, it's great. I mean, Caitlin Olsen, just pure comedy there. And I got to figure out who actually helped write the show because I thought it was some other people, but it was some writers from Always Sunny who did that.
Okay.
But there's that. Can we talk about the side characters now? Because like the kind of recurring characters of the show.
We have to.
There is a way, and it's really funny too, is I was, listening to the Always Sunny podcast, and they were talking through the way they have characters and some of the stuff. And I think there's like two versions. There's either they're also crazy or they're normal and surrounded by the gang who is crazy.
Who's insane.
Kind of characters.
Which I kind of love that part though, because it does, what happens when you love a show so much and you're so close to it is like, their behavior all of a sudden doesn't seem so bad when you're watching it. They're like, oh, it's just typical Charlie. That's just so Charlie. And then when you have like a normal side character, you're like, oh no, these people are fucked. They are so fucked up. And I don't know. I think that I like that better when they're normal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's something to be said though about like how characters can be normal or come in normal and then devolve because they're associated with the gang, which very clearly you have Maureen Ponderosa and you have Cricket, who just their lives and who they are just like melt and devolve because of their association to the gang.
Oh, Rickety Cricket. That is like it's so bad.
No, what's funny is Cricket is great, but Maureen Ponderosa goes from being like meeting up with Dennis at a Subway and then getting married and then getting divorced and then fast forward a couple seasons and she thinks she's a cat and she's like hissing at other characters and running around. Which I believe is it canon that she's dead now, by the way? I'm just realizing.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. Because there was that remember like that Making a Murderer-esque like parody episode they did? I don't know if she actually...
She must be. I mean, hey, let's do a callback to our last episode. Jason Sudeikis. Schmitty.
Oh, Schmitty. I love... it goes back to my
Charlie's worst enemy.
But also it goes back to like, because what becomes the turning point is when Mac is trying to do the high kick and kick the bell and can't do it.
Oh my God.
And then Schmitty's like, nah, I gotta do it like this. And hi-ya. And then just like the turn and look of Mac of just being like, this guy's got to go. Like, this is like, he didn't, but yeah, I love the fact that Schmitty pops up because Jason Sudeikis' character sort of pops up and he is one of the most normal people for the gang to be around the gang. And funny enough, fun fact, in that episode, and I forget what episode it is, I have to look it up now, but they're dining outside at a restaurant in Philly. And for those that don't know, clearly these people, the show is filmed in LA, but if there are certain exterior shots or certain things, they will fly to Philadelphia and film certain scenes there. And that scene was like filmed right across from like the famous market in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I'm not from Philly. I'm a New Yorker, but
same.
And I have it on my list of like, next time I'm in Philly, I'm going to eat at the restaurant that Schmitty ate at, where he told them where they can have whatever they want. Remember?
Yeah, you can have whatever you want.
Yeah, Dennis typically orders for us. He knows what.
Isn't that such a weird thing too? It's just you. Even hearing you say it's like I love how weird the show is, and I also love. We've talked about this before. I love a show full of comedians that are so damn good at improv that more often than not, the improv material is what makes the final cut. And they said, didn't they say in their podcast are like 90% of the improv shit is what makes the final cut? Like we might as well not write anything anymore.
Well, the McPoyles especially.
Oh my God.
Are one of my favorites.
McPoyles versus Ponderosa?
Yeah. Well, Jimmy Simpson, who was in like the show Westworld and everything else.
Yeah.
And who like was known as a McPoyle before then. Like his like, there's the one, and there's tons of bloopers from this show, which if you've never seen, are a blast to watch because first off, Danny DeVito can hold it on almost anything. He is a professional.
He's a machine. He is a machine.
He is a machine. But that man could just like stare at a blank face as everyone else is cracking up around him, and he will hold his own. Like he just sends his brain off onto a different planet and doesn't acknowledge what's happening around him. But Rob, who like Mac, he will break if someone sneezes. Like he is there are so many scenes that made the final cut where you can see him turning around or hold like trying to hide from showing that he's laughing while they're in the scene, and it's great. The
McPoyle brothers though, I will be honest with you, very rarely did this show truly gross me out. They're like, I remember the first time I saw it, I think the first time we see them is in the Charlie Got Molested episode. And they're like, something about people that are just super sweaty and obsessed with milk made me so fucking nauseous. But these are those people, I feel like these characters make the gang seem normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they're not that bad. Like,
well, again, it goes to that concept of like, there's either the characters are insane or they're normal people surrounded by like, the crazy of the gang. They
just like gross me out so bad. Like I just like would choke puke down. It's just like, why are they sweating and drinking milk? That is so disgusting.
Liam and Ryan McPoyle. They popped up in like, what was it? The first 2 seasons. They were in a few episodes across the spectrum. Yeah. And then Ryan, I think, appears in one extra episode over Liam because there was like the courtroom one, which I think that was Ponderosa.
McPoyle versus Ponderosa. That's such a funny freaking episode.
I think it was that one where Liam or Jimmy Simpson was out filming Westworld and couldn't do it, which was sad.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite side character?
Gail the Snail? Gail the Snail, man. Just another like disgusting character. But
we're Mr. Show fans. So
yeah, and also it's so funny too. I'm rewatching New Girl again, comfort show. And so many of these tiny side characters on this show and characters of the show somehow come into the New Girl universe.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it the other day and Gail plays Nick Miller's cousin's wife that he wants Nick to fuck her so that they can have a baby because his soldiers ain't fighting no more. And it's just like, it made me realize how much I love Gail. I was like, oh God, she's so good.
Yeah. I'm going to run down a bunch of the side characters in general. You have the waitress, who is Mary Elizabeth Ellis, who is Charlie's actual wife in real life.
Who is in also New Girl.
Is she really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that
She
either.
plays what's his name's ex-girlfriend, Caroline.
Oh, wow. Did not know that. You have Bonnie Kelly, which is Charlie's mom, who is like so sweet, and like the contrast between his mom and Mac's mom, old lady house, is great. It's just great.
Oh my God, Miss Mac,
who had money me please. They pretended she had cancer for an episode. It's just great. Okay. We mentioned the McPoyles. Artemis.
Oh my God. I just, that's one of those characters. I'm like, how did they write that character?
Yeah.
And like, first of all, you have to write it, but then you have to cast it. And it was just like one of those characters like, oh my God.
If I remember correctly from my Always Sunny knowledge and having to know stuff behind the scenes, because first off, Artemis's real name is Artemis, right? That's I believe she is a friend of Caitlin Olsen, and I think they work together. I want to say they worked together on another movie that they were in, but I have to check that, but I don't remember. But I believe they worked together before. Okay. I could be making all this up, by the way. Just don't.
I'm believing it. So,
yeah. But yeah, she's Artemis is great. I won't say her most famous quote. Do you quote Artemis? Do you quote Artemis every once in a while?
Yeah, not in public. Amongst my home, yes.
Brittany Daniel plays Carmen, the tranny, which is who comes up a few times. You have, and I'll just stop right here. Easily my favorite. Okay. Jack Kelly.
Oh my.
Uncle Jack. Yeah. Just the weird, so he started out as like a one note, like creepy uncle. And that just evolved into he's a lawyer and he's like
the worst one. He's the worst of all of the random relatives that show up. He's the worst one.
Are the kids confined to like a crawl space or, and also he's obsessed with masculine hands.
He loves hands.
But here's the thing. And if you don't know, so he pops up in an episode and he plays a lawyer and he's a very bad lawyer.
Oh my God, is this when his hand falls off?
No, I was going to go before that.
Oh, so okay.
That's the thing how they elevate characters, even though they're just recurring and it can be seasons apart, is there's an episode where he meets the other good lawyer.
Yeah.
As Frank would call him, the Jew lawyer, anyway. And then he comes out, he's like, he likes his hands and he wants to take a photo for the website with the good lawyer's hands on top of his to make it look like it's his hands. And that's where he gets like, we're lawyers. And they take the photo. And then cut to like another season or two later. And yeah, he's talking about his big masculine hands because he's wearing these big rubber glove hands that he's trying to make it look like they're his hands. And then, yeah, he makes a motion and his hand flies off. And then it's subtle and they don't talk about it. But in another scene, it's back on. But then there's duct tape around the wrist of the tape of the hand to keep it on his arm. Yeah, but the way they do that, where they just take a character.
Nobody look.
But where that elevation is great. I mean, they did it with like Cricket to a greater extent. They did it with Maureen Ponderosa to a greater extent. But like little characters where he mentions you only have masculine hands. You have very strong hands. And then, 4 episodes later, not even like in order, but like, 2 seasons later, and the next episode the character appears on, suddenly he's like obsessed with masculine hands. Like it just evolves into like funnier and funnier, and just like these people are actually sort of devolving. Which, speaking of which, then you have Rickety Cricket.
Oh my God, he has a new injury every time, and he just gets more and more disgusting. Hard to look at on purpose. Of course, that's the whole point. But he just becomes so hard to look at.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Then you have Mrs. Mack, who
she's
just
so
grunts like that's
so
her.
Funny. Chain smoking.
Yeah.
I love her.
I mentioned the other McPoyles, but I didn't mention the Margaret McPoyle.
Oh,
she's deaf and mute.
It's
she hooked up with Mac.
This show. I just feel like everything we're about to talk about, I just feel like I'm teetering on the line of saying something wrong.
I know.
Oh boy.
You have Luther, which is Mac's dad, who's in prison. And which we got to talk about the one very serious episode of It's Always Sunny that popped up I think last season or the 2 seasons ago. You have the lawyer or the Jew lawyer, depending on how we want to call him, anything politically correct. Who does like, I like how he goes back and forth between like the gang gets to him and other times he's above the gang and then he gets over on them. But there's like been like one or two times when like they sort of get to him a little bit. You have the waiter who I gotta say, and this might be a hot take, but he pops up many times. First off, there's also one time he pops up as another character. He's like the guy hiring them in one of the episodes at like an office. Otherwise, he is just the waiter as far as the actor is concerned. And then there was one episode they did where they kind of like actually spend time in his life and like got to like Frank went to his house and I was like, I don't know. We don't need that. I don't want to know much more about him.
Humanize him.
Yeah. I want him to just be the waiter. Like you guys just, and I love that back and forth of like, are they pretending to not know who he is? Or do they just like, do they actually not realize he's the waiter that they've had every time they go to the same restaurant? But you have that. Then you have Gail the Snail.
Oh, Gail.
One of my favorites, and I'm sad we lost him, but Demaniac.
Oh.
Maniac. Which is Roddy Rod Piper, who passed away, who was just great on that show.
So good.
Another one of my favorites because he's just silly and stupid. And the guy who plays him, I always conflate him with another actor, but Ben the Soldier. He's face painted as a turtle. Then you have the Ponderosas, Maureen and Bill. Bill Ponderosa. So goddamn funny. And then the last one, just old black man.
That is, yeah. That's it. That's the lineup. What names?
Yeah. So anyway, a great supporting cast, and I think it clearly is defined there too. Is like you have some people who they're normal, but the gang is crazy, and then others that are just crazier than the gang is, and I think that's great because like it varies it up a little bit because I feel like other shows it's just they're normal and surrounded by crazy or vice versa, but this is a good mix. Yeah.
Did you watch the TV spinoff in 2007 about Danny DeVito?
No,
I did not watch it, but it was one of my fun facts. There's a one-off TV short spinoff from 2007 where Danny DeVito called Danny DeVito in the contract, and the plot is that Charlie Day forgets to read his contract of season 3 for Always Sunny, and the contract for season 3 says that he has to perform oral sex on Danny DeVito. He signs it.
Is this like on a DVD or something?
I don't know. It was just one of the fun facts, and it was like I laughed so hard reading it. I was like, "What the fuck?"
Like the fact that Danny DeVito has been on the show as long as he has, like he latched onto the show.
Yeah,
it's almost difficult to like you forget he was a part of like giant sitcom in the 80s. He was a part of Taxi.
Absolutely. He's like TV royalty for absolutely. And then comes on and does this. It's just great. And then his daughter comes on and plays somebody that he's got a thing for.
Oh yeah, that was so creepy.
So creepy.
This the little like lip thing he does where he like flaps his lips and like looks her up and down. Yeah. The fact that it was his daughter. That's difficult. I give him credit. What about one of the other funny ones too, and this is always like a GIF around the internet, and yes, it's pronounced GIF. Is from the Christmas special, the Christmas episode they did, where he naked like flops out of the couch because he's hiding inside the couch.
Yeah. This show has so much physical comedy. Yeah. I think that's another reason I love it. And like every comedian on the show is such a great comedian because there is so much physical comedy in this show.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Something else that I sort of noticed in rewatching it, especially too, was I mentioned Seinfeld, love Seinfeld. And maybe it was because I was too young to notice it, but even as an adult, you don't notice it so much, but Seinfeld especially like did a lot of homages or parodies. I call it homage to movies and TV shows, right? Especially movies. We talked about that with Community. And I think there are some shows that do it way on the nose, but like even when It's Always Sunny does it, right? Like there's the episode where the McPoyles are, break in and they hold the gang hostage. And Frank is in the vents, and it's sort of like it's a Die Hard parody, basically. It's a Die Hard homage, or at least that part is. It's not, I mean, it's on the nose if you're paying attention enough, but it's not banging you over the head of like, this is a parody and look how much fun we're having. Look how silly we're being. Like it still stays in its own world without.
It's true to the Always Sunny world. It stays in their universe. Yeah. For sure.
I feel like there are other shows that like when they try to do a parody or try to do an homage, they go way outside the bounds, and it's like, you're not being your show anymore. You're just trying to like do an entire like offshoot parody of a thing. And with the exception of the one episode, which I'll talk about in a second, which was the quote unquote like more serious episode with Mac, I want to say the show hasn't really gone off the rails in like a direction where it's like, oh, this isn't It's Always Sunny. What are they doing? So
no, it stays unhinged the whole time, but it also stays in their universe, like everything they do. And I wonder if that's because I feel like they write the show based off of people they know. Like a lot of the characters are based off of people they've come across. Like the whole Green Man character literally is based off of a guy that Rob McElhenney knew that used to wear a freaking bright green morph suit to Eagles games. So like, I feel like they write a lot of these nuts characters stuff off of people they know. So that keeps it feeling like it's still in the same universe.
I love it.
Even though they're insane. Do you know about the Russian spinoff? That like this cracks me up every time I hear this fact.
Yeah.
I have not watched it, but have you?
No, I haven't. I've just like seen like a clip or I've seen like photos of it or something. Yeah, that's about it.
So weird. It's a Russian spinoff, and the bar, they call the bar Philadelphia, right?
Oh, really? I don't know. I didn't know that much.
Yeah, the bar's called Philadelphia.
Yeah. That's well, it's funny too. I was like actually watching the other day about like all the different spinoffs of The Office there have been for like different markets and stuff. Like, but the fact that It's Always Sunny reached that, it's no one can be as bad as this cast for what it's worth. I think there's something to be said there, as far as who their characters are, and still somehow remain lovable somehow. But
every single one.
Yeah.
I also love that dicktowel.com is a real website.
Yes.
That you can buy a dick towel. So if you are listening and you're like, man, I really wish I had a dick towel, you can go to dicktowel.com and get yourself one.
Do you have a favorite episode?
Yes.
Really?
Well, for the first time since we've started this podcast, the Can We Talk About podcast people actually hung out with each other this past weekend. I think I brought it up that the musical episode.
Wait, just to be clear before you continue.
Okay, yes.
Because there's two quote unquote musical episodes.
There are two.
Right, because there's
The Nightman Cometh is the one I'm referring to.
Yes, okay. Because I was going to say the other one.
This is more community theater, I should say.
Yes.
It's more community theater episode.
Yeah.
I laughed so hard. And I think one of the reasons I love it so much is they seem so rough and tumble in the beginning when you first start watching the show, right?
Yeah.
And then you think about these characters, they just willingly are all going to go do some community theater, get full in costume, and it's believable. Like, I couldn't even get a friend to come on this podcast probably to talk. They wouldn't do it. Maybe a couple. But the fact that they just, not only do they do it, I mean, just like the eyeliner, the songs, every single bit of it. Danny DeVito as a troll. Yeah. I top to tail enjoyed every single second of that episode. And I think I could watch that one again and again and again. But also, obviously, the Poyo vs. Ponderosa episode might be, to me, the most quotable episode of the whole series. Do you have a favorite?
Bird Law.
Bird Law.
It's funny because I feel like I have a favorite season, and which I'll start there. Maybe I can break it down from there. But I'm with you, right? Because I think the show hit its peaks between season 4 and maybe like season 6. Not this, or maybe season 7.
That's fair, because I would say my tied favorite episode is the cannibalism episode. I've watched that episode more than any other episode. I've rewatched that episode. If I show someone this show, I love showing them that episode.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to know anything to just understand the comedy, and that is immaculate. And I think that's season 4, right? Like the first episode of season 4?
I forget. I actually don't know. Well, let me do this. Okay. I'm going to start from the beginning, and I'll run through the titles of the episodes, and then we'll get to season 4. And I promise I won't skirt the question you asked me. I'll get there.
All right.
Season 1 is 7 episodes. I remember in a pre Danny DeVito world, you have the gang gets racist. Charlie wants an abortion. Underage drinking a national concern. Charlie has cancer. Gun fever. The gang finds a dead guy. Charlie got molested is the final episode, which is where we finally, I think that's the first episode we see Uncle Jack. But anyway.
Yes.
Then season 2, we get Charlie gets crippled. The gang goes jihad. Dennis and Dee go on welfare. Mac bangs Dennis's mom.
Oh my God, that's such a good episode.
$100 baby. The gang gives back. The gang exploits a miracle. The gang runs for office. Charlie goes America all over everybody's ass. And Dennis and Dee get a new dad. And that's season 2. And then, so now at this point, Danny DeVito has joined the cast. He's in there. Okay, now we get into season 3. And then we start getting to some episodes where it's like, oh yeah, like some of these start hitting as far as like you remembering them and like being quotable and all those things, right? So you get the gang finds a dumpster baby. The gang gets invisible. Dennis and Dee's mom is dead. The gang gets held hostage, which is the one I mentioned with the McPoyles. The Aluminum Monster versus Fatty Magoo. The gang solves the North Korea situation. The gang sells out. Frank sets Sweet Dee on fire. Sweet Dee's dating a retarded person. Oh. Mac is a serial killer. Dennis looks like a registered sex offender. The gang gets whacked. Bums making a mess all over the city. And the gang dances their asses off, which is the final episode of the 3rd season. And now, and this is where I was saying too, is like, I think my peak is season 5, but season 4, we kick off with Mac and Dennis manhunters. The gang solves the gas crisis. America's Next Top Patties Billboard Model Contest. Mac's banging the waitress. Mac and Charlie die. Who pooped the bed? Patty's Pub, the worst bar in Philadelphia. Dennis Reynolds, An Erotic Life. Sweet Dee has a heart attack. And funny enough, as we're coming up to this too, I'm realizing this is probably the most like non-episode you get, but it works. The gang cracks the Liberty Bell. The gang gets extreme, home makeover edition. And finally, the Nightman Cometh. So, and this is where I said, I feel like the show is like sort of picking up steam where like they found their voice.
Yeah.
And then you get into season 5, which is the gang exploits the mortgage crisis, which is really, that one's great. That's where Sweet, and this is also, I believe, must kick off where
this is 2009 too. So yeah, this is like real life. The mortgage crisis is happening. The post 2008.
I want to say too, this is where Caitlin Olsen is pregnant in real life, because you were saying that she gives birth, right? Okay. So she tries to become a surrogate mother, and this is where you get like Vic Vinegar, and Frank buys a house and tries to kick out the people there whose their house was foreclosed on. Anyway, love that episode. Then you get The Gang Hits the Road, which I think is probably the first episode I ever saw, which is ironic because it's not an episode that takes place in the bar, really. That's where they try to go to the Grand Canyon. But
I think that's the first time that Patty's Bar isn't somewhere in the episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. That makes sense. Also funny enough, I mean, again, like that was the first episode I saw, which is a weird intro to the show, but so be it. You get The Great Recession, which is where the show opens and Frank is dangling from the rafters. The gang gives Frank an intervention. Why do you expect there to be a gun at this intervention?
That's where Gail comes in.
The waitress is getting married. The World Series defense. The gang wrestles for the troops. Patty's Pub, home of the original Kitten Mittens. Mac and Dennis break up. The Dennis System. Mac and Charlie write a movie. And the gang reignites the rivalry. Which those are some banger episodes in there.
Those are, yeah.
5.
I would say episode for episode, season 5, probably. That's like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a heavyweight.
And so like I think my favorite episode is probably somewhere in there. I love The Nightman Cometh as well. And I would probably pick that as my favorite. But since you already did, I'll probably say I still love The Gang Hits the Road. I think that's a great episode. So I'll pick that for now until I find something else. Season 6, you have Mac fights gay marriage, which is when he finds out that the tranny never called him after she got her surgery. Dennis gets divorced. The gang buys a boat, which is also great. I mean, these are all great, but I think I said that initially because I'm just thinking of Caitlin Olsen dancing like the inflatable tube guy.
Yeah.
Mac's big break. Mac and Charlie, white trash. Mac's mom burns her house down. Who got Dee pregnant? That is one of my favorite episodes. Who got Dee
That's
pregnant?
a really good one.
Yeah. That's where you get the, you will call her, like that line out of that. The gang gets a new member. Is that the one with, is the gang gets a new member the one with Schmitty?
I think so.
Is that it? Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Funny enough, you have 2 guest stars in that episode are Jason Sudeikis and Dave Foley from The Kids in the Hall. So, so great. Dee Reynolds, Shaping America's Youth. That was also the first time, and those 2 episodes together, they're not a part 1, part 2, but they're the first time you really get like a connected episode because the gang gets a new member is when Dee and Charlie go and work for the school. Dee takes over as the drama teacher-esque kind of thing, and Charlie's the janitor. And then Dee Reynolds, Shaping America's Youth, is sort of the wrap-up to that story in that episode. So I don't think they have a lot of those where they like have connecting episodes. But anyway. Then you have Charlie Kelly, King of the Rats. The gang gets stranded in the woods. Dee gives birth. And A Very Sunny Christmas.
Is that the last one that Fred Savage directs?
Yes, he is. Yeah,
okay. That's the last one he directs for the show? I think he bows out after that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think in IRL, as the kids say, I know he had a show on Fox briefly with the waitress playing his wife on that show. But also, I mean, especially in recent years, we've had some, I'll call it troubling news about Mr. Fred Savage.
Freddie boy.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Good director in the early seasons. We can move past him. Anyway, so then we move on. One of my other favorites is coming up here too. We should just keep going. We have Frank's Pretty Woman, which I love that too because were you a big fan of, I feel like there were two growing up. You had either Bill Nye the Science Guy or Beakman's World.
I liked both, but I was a Bill Nye kid for sure.
Okay. I was a Beakman's World fan.
Yeah.
Alana Ubach? I can't remember pronounce her name. She was every time I'd see her pop up in different things, it was always great. She actually popped up in a movie. She played Danny DeVito's daughter in Renaissance Man, which was like this late 90s movie. Great movie, by the way. Totally worth watching. But she she also played Roxy, the hooker. And she was from Beakman's World, which is the connection there. If anyone remembers Beakman's World, please let me know. I love that show. I love that thing. So
Gang goes to the Jersey Shore.
I love that one as well.
I love that one because we are New York kids. Yeah. So like going to the Jersey Shore was like a big vacation for us.
Yeah.
And it's so true. You get there and you're like, what a fucking shithole. I remember one time we went to, like, why I love this episode is because I remember growing up, it was like, you went to the Jersey Shore. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then I remember I went with my friends.
Yeah.
We were like 17, got our license. And I remember sitting on the beach and we're laying there underage drinking and the water tide comes up and just like 2 heroin needles wash up with it. And I was like, oh fuck, we're at the Jersey Shore. We've made it.
Yeah.
And that episode was so good. Like, it's just so accurate to what really is the Jersey Shore.
They get pinched by the needles on the beach. They step on a needle. And you get so much out of it. You get your rum ham. You get like the,
my God. Which is real.
Yeah. Also, this is worth noting. This is the Fat Mac season too.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Which I love the fact that they don't even address it directly until episode 10. Which think about that. You all of a sudden you're like, why the hell is Mac fat?
Oh yeah,
And
episode 10 is how Mac got fat.
Yeah. Well, we're ramping it up. So the gang goes to the Jersey Shore was the second episode. Then you get Frank Reynolds' Little Beauties, which is hilarious. I love that. I love anything where like Danny DeVito gets like is like on his own going insane and like not like a gang thing. Sweet D gets audited, which is one of the like her little head bob in the beginning of that episode, and cut to the title card is probably the best title card cut they've ever done. Frank's brother, which that I guess that's another one where they sort of like the whole episode is essentially like a flashback where they try to make Danny DeVito look young, and clearly like that's an impossible task. And then you have Storm of the Century, one of my favorites, Charlie McDennis, The Game of Games. Then you have The Antisocial Network, The Gang Gets Trapped, How Mac Got Fat. There is it. That's it right there. Thunder Gun Express, another one I love. I feel like anytime they're on like a mission or a road trip or something, I love those episodes. But Thunder Gun Express is great. And then you have the high school reunion, and then the high school reunion part 2, The Gang's Revenge. That's season 7 is strong. So all right, I'll keep that on that's still on the top peak of seasons, I'll say. Then you have season 8 is the first one I think that starts dwindling down to like 10 episodes a season. I mean, aside from the first season, but now we're getting into like shorter seasons. You have Pop, The Final Solution. The gang recycles their trash, which is great. Just that, I think that's where we get that montage of Mac on the back of the limousine.
Yeah.
That's just getting dirtier and dirtier and grosser and grosser. The Maureen Ponderosa Wedding Massacre, which I love so much. So
good.
There's that one scene where it's like Liam and Liam McPoyle like takes off the mustache. And he's like, who is this guy? And he takes off the mustache, and suddenly, his brother recognizes him. It's so silly. I love it. Charlie and Dee find love, which do you know who who they fall in love with? Have you gone back and realized that? Because I feel like the guest stars in that got a little bit more famous later on than they were at the time. Who does Charlie fall in love with in that episode? Do you know?
No. I have not watched seasons like 6 on since they like first aired.
Okay. So Charlie and Dee find love, right, is the episode with and I'm going to try to pull it up too so I can just like read up the verbatim. Charlie finally lets go of the waitress, and he and Dee find themselves mingling with society's elite.
Okay. I don't remember who it is.
I kind of want you to find.
Oh, wait. Oh, my God. White Lotus. What's her name?
Yep.
It's Rachel in White Lotus.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Alexandra Daddario.
Come
on.
Yeah.
I can't believe I don't remember that name.
Yeah, I know. Prime time for her. And it's even funnier, too, because, like, in that episode, Dee, the guy that was, like, with Dee was clearly just, like, making fun of her. And, like, but then, Alexandra Daddario. She's like, but I really did love you. He's like, no, I was just using you for the waitress. Just moves on. That's it. Love that episode. You get The Gang Gets Analyzed, which also great. Charlie's mom has cancer. Frank's back in business, which I love that. We get to see the warthog. Was that his name?
Yeah.
Charlie rules the world. The gang dines out. And The Gang Dines Out is the one we get like the Charlie and Mac looking at each other across the restaurant meme, which I love. I love that scene. And then Reynolds versus Reynolds, the serial defense, which is great. I love that.
That's
devolving.
Another great one.
I love that. It's like one topic.
I haven't seen these all in so long, and now I want to like start from just season 6 and go.
It's great, right? All right, then we get into season 9. And this is where, like, I'm not saying there aren't some bangers in here. There are.
Mac and Dennis Buy a Timeshare is a great episode.
Is great.
That's a great episode. That's in this season, right?
Yes, absolutely. So the first episode is the gang broke Dee. Then you have Gun Fever 2, still hot. The gang tries desperately to win an award. You have Mac and Dennis buy a timeshare, which is great. How many days did they buy?
Oh, I don't remember, but I was like, that is one of my favorite episodes too. That's up there.
Mac Day, which I love because who do we get in Mac Day? Who's Mac's cousin?
Oh my God. What's
Country Mac, Sean William Scott.
I could not have pulled that name out if there was a gun to my head. I want you to know that.
I don't want you to think I'm too good at this. I'm working off notes.
Like you're saying it. I'm like, yeah, I know what his face looks like. Yeah. I can't remember that name.
But Country Mac is great.
Country Mac is good.
Yeah. Love Country Mac. R.I.P. Country Mac. The gang saves the day. The gang gets quarantined. Flowers for Charlie. The gang makes Lethal Weapon 6. And the gang squashes their beefs, which is one of my favorite episodes.
That's a really good one.
There. And that's the thing too, is like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think this is a little bit beyond their peak, but at the same time too, it's like there are some hard, good episodes in there. The gang squashes their beef, which is where you get Gail the Snail and then Frank's landlord.
Ugh.
He's like, she's just mashing it. And then everyone just like golf claps. Yeah. It's very good. Very good. I love that. Then, okay, we have season 10 now. We're in the double digits. And then you have the gang beats Boggs, the gang group dates, Psycho Pete returns, Charlie work, which in and of itself is an entire, go ahead. I see you nodding.
No, that's a great one.
Yeah. That's where they're, that's their send off. I want to call it homage. That's their send off to Birdman. Like,
Yes.
Doing an entire one shot, the entire episode. The gang spies like us. The gang misses the boat. Mac kills his dad. The gang goes on family night. Frank retires. And Ass Kickers United, Mac and Charlie join a cult, which you're a huge fan of what's their names? Who plays one of the guys from the cult?
Hold on.
Now I'm just throwing. Who's Armchair Expert?
Well, it's Dax Shepard.
Yeah, Dax Shepard is one of the guys.
But hold on, because I have notes on this.
Okay.
I have notes on this episode.
Really?
Well, no, because this was one of those episodes that like they talked about when Rob McElhaney and Charlie Day both went on Dax Shepard's podcast and they talked about it.
That. Yeah.
And he was so he was like so out of his element, and he really talked about how he's like, you truly can't describe what it's like to be in that world with them until you see them. Like, he's like, Dax Shepard comes from improv, right? What was he? Groundlings? He's part of the Groundlings with Melissa McCarthy. They were in like the same thing. And he's just like, I felt like I was on acid the whole fucking time. Like, I didn't know what was happening. I was just so happy to be there.
Yeah. And
I love Sandy Martin, who plays Mrs. Mack in this episode. Yeah. But like, what's the guy's name that plays Tiny?
Oh, the big guy.
He talks about that too. And he's just like, he's fucking incredible.
I made him eat a poopy.
It's just, so they did talk about that episode, but just how he's like, it was coming from improv. I thought it was pretty good, but then you're around it and it's just like, it's like everywhere you look. It's like, I felt like I was on fucking MDMA the whole time.
My favorite part about that, by the way, in that, which is so gross to like, but when he's eating the poopy, and Frank is screaming, I made him eat a poopy. He's still chewing. Like, he won't stop. Like, he's just sitting there just chewing, and it's just hilarious. I love that. All right, and now we get into some of the later episodes. And I think this is where the show starts showing its age a little bit, I'll say. I'll put it that way. So you get although there's still some solid ones in here, which we'll get to. Char D. McDennis 2, Electric Boogaloo. Frank falls out the window, which is like the one where we get like where it's like, POV of Frank running around the world. The gang hits the slopes, which I love so much. I love that episode. D made a smut film. Mac and Dennis move to the suburbs, which is a classic. Being Frank. Oh, wait, did I confuse those two? Frank falls out the window is not the one we get the POV. Being Frank is the one where it's the POV of Frank. He just goes through a lot this season. And then one of your favorites, McPoyle versus Ponderosa, the trial of the century. Charlie catches a leprechaun. The gang goes to hell. and The Gang Goes to Hell Part 2, which that's
those
awesome.
are real. Yeah.
Those are great.
Pretty incredible.
And then it kicks off with what was the other musical, which I thought you were referencing maybe, but The Gang Turns Black. This is season 12, by the way. One of my standout favorites, The Gang Goes to a Water Park.
You really do love the adventure episodes. Every single one of your favorites.
I do.
It's like they're Hobbit episodes. We're going on an adventure.
Yes. This is the one you get like, Frank going AIDS and just like waving himself through the water park crowd. I have AIDS. Old Lady House, a situation comedy. Wolf Cola, a public relations nightmare. Making Dennis Reynolds a Murderer, which is the Making a Murderer parody-ish send up. Hero or Hate Crime, which I love that one too. Which is where we officially get Mac to admit he's gay. That's the first.
Took
and
a while.
You get to see his workout bike with the little fist, to PTSD, which I don't remember that one actually. Now that I think about it,
I don't either.
The Gang Tends Bar. A Cricket's Tale, which is hilarious, where I'm spoiling it here, but we find out at the end that he made love to a dog, I guess. It's hilarious. He just did PCP in the bathroom. Dennis's Double Life is where that ends. And I think that is where that was supposed to be like potentially Glenn Howerton, who plays Dennis, like his last episode, because he was going to film AP Bio. And got picked up by NBC. So now we're into season 13, which ironically enough, Mindy Kaling guests in the first episode of this season, which is The Gang Makes Patties Great Again. Then you have The Gang Escapes, The Gang Beats Boggs Ladies reboot, Time's Up for the Gang, The Gang Gets New Wheels, The Gang Solves the Bathroom Problem, The Gang Does a Clip Show, Charlie's Home Alone, The Gang Wins the Big Game, and Mac Finds His Pride. Which, just to step on that, like that was it. That episode is beautiful, by the way.
That I would say, like, heartwarmingly is such a great episode.
Yeah. Probably the only episode where it's like, oh, this isn't It's Always Sunny, because it diverges from what you expect from the show fully, but it's so goddamn beautiful. Like, you can't help but watch it. Sorry, this is going on way too long. I shouldn't have started this. There's 162 episodes of the show. All right, I'll power through the last two seasons. The Gang Gets Romantic. We're in season 14 now. Thundergun 4, Maximum Cool. D-Day. The Gang Chokes. The Gang Texts. The Janitor Always Mops Twice. The Gang Solves Global Warming. Patty's Has a Jumper. A Woman's Right to Chop. And Waiting for Big Mo. So yeah, this is where I was just like, season 14. And again, I'll give him some credit because obviously they're off their footing, right? Like Glenn Howerton was supposed to leave, then he comes back. They're throwing a little bit off kilter. And then speaking of throwing off kilter, we get to season 15, which you said I love episodes where they're going on a road trip. I mean, this
is the whole Ireland road trip adventure.
Which I didn't like that much, which I'll explain a little bit in a second. But so we have 2020, a year in review. The Gang makes Lethal Weapon 7. The Gang buys a roller rink, which is a prequel episode, I guess. We get like a little flashback. The Gang replaces D with a monkey. The Gang goes to Ireland. The Gang's still in Ireland. D sinks in a bog. And the Gang carries a corpse up a mountain. So we get like, 5 episodes out in Ireland?
Yeah.
So, which I gotta be honest, I didn't love the last season. So
okay,
so
it was shorter. It was only 8 episodes.
Yeah, and maybe and that's where I was like, I've sort of put an asterisk on it as well because it's like I didn't like it, but also they're not even in the United States, much less Philly for the entire.
Yeah, and it's COVID. It was like probably just like a weird.
Yeah.
Comedy changed a little.
A little odd, yeah. Plus, I mean, we had to wait a while because that premiered December 1st,
the end, yeah.
The last time we had a show was November 2019. So it was a big gap between seasons there. But
so what revived I always love Always Sunny. It's definitely a comfort show for a billion reasons. But we started watching the Wrexham show.
You did? How is it?
Yeah, I freaking loved it. So the whole premise of this, which is ties into our Ted Lasso, which is like right into the middle of it. And rewatching Ted Lasso, they mention it in Ted Lasso, where he says, I just got a call from Wrexham AFC. I don't know if Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, those American movie stars, are serious, but they're going to buy the Wrexham club. And it's mentioned in season 2 of Ted Lasso. Yeah, we were watching it last night and we were like, holy shit. But yeah, so the show is really great. It's behind the scenes. It's in real life.
Wow.
Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds buy a football club called Wrexham AFC. And it's a really great show and it's very funny. Yeah. And there is a song that a band in Wrexham wrote for them about, I think it's called It's Always Sunny in Wrexham, the song. And it's very good. I will send it to you. It's a great song that these middle-aged Welsh men wrote in their garage.
Yeah.
And they play it on the show. But he actually bought the football team. So watching that, and I was like, man, I love Rock McElhenney. He's so funny. Yeah. And then you get to see him and his actual real life wife, who is Dee, like at Wrexham games and stuff like that. So it's a great show. I liked it a lot.
I will say, I mean, you know what's funny is everyone's sort of gone off and done different projects. And I got to tell you, I really like, there hasn't really been anything. Like I mentioned, AP Bio was good. It wasn't bad. I just didn't get into it like to watch every episode. But if I had to go watch an episode, I'd enjoy it. I love the mech. And then Rob's other show, which is Mythic Quest, I really like that show. In fact, I actually have to catch up because I haven't caught up on the latest season, which premiered this year. A little crossover with Danny Pudi there from Community. So like, you know, all on the same, you know, Can We Talk About universe? But yeah, no, I mean, I feel like they're really grounded in what they do and they're really good at it. I'm really excited to see Glenn Howerton in that Blackberry movie. Like there's all these like movies coming out. Like there's a story about Tetris, the story about, the Nike Jordans, the Air Jordans.
Yeah. That looks so good. We talked about that in our 2023 episode. I'm excited for that.
And almost a parody to that is Glenn Howerton is in a movie. Apparently it's supposed to be like a parody. It's not supposed to be like a serious movie, but it's sort of like, think about what the Nike Jordans like movie is supposed to be. He's doing that about Blackberry.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about Always Sunny too, because it's been going for so long, there are so many fun facts and Easter eggs. And like we just talked about, like they keep it so close to the vest, but like the original pilot was shot with Rob McElhenney's then girlfriend.
Yeah, I knew about that.
Which, they reshot with Dee, who then ended up getting the job, and Rob McElhenney.
Yeah,
she ends up marrying him. She got both.
Apparently, I was listening to them on their podcast, and which I really love their podcast, really good. But apparently, and you know, obviously, got to be careful these days. You know, times have changed. But she pursued him apparently.
My girl.
He rebuffed her advances at first, and then eventually, I think they had like a party at like Charlie Day's house or something, and that's when they finally like, you know, connected, hooked up, as the kids say.
Now, I will say that again, there's so many little fun facts about that kind of stuff, but they do keep it so close to their universe, like we said before.
Yeah.
That like even when you see the fun facts, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because their universe that they've created is so strange and so small that like they can do anything within it. And like the dick towel thing, the fact that rum ham is real, and so that's got to be so disgusting.
Yeah. But I will say too, the other thing that's frustrating, right? This is very, very inside baseball. Okay. If you can't tell listening to our podcast and like the music that you hear in our podcasts, as far as like the openers and the intros and all that other stuff, all the production music behind the scenes. I grew up on Looney Tunes. I grew up on, you know, like animation and silly, you know, archival music and stuff. Their entire library they use, I was aware of it way before they used it, right? It was stuff that was a part of like the infamously like the Ren and Stimpy soundtracks and stuff. Like it was heavily used in animation there. I think later years, like SpongeBob SquarePants used a lot of the stuff that they use. We've used it here on the podcast here, licensed and all. And we pay the big bucks for the big music. It is annoying to me, frustrating from like that perspective of like, you know, Temptation Sensation, which is the song they use at the beginning of the show. It's like their intro music or their theme song is actually just a piece of production music we can license for our podcast if we wanted to. Really.
That's so funny.
But it's become so synonymous with their show that I'm like, God, they stole an entire library of music because it's hard to use on podcasts and other things that I do because they use it. It's become a part of their universe and their show. But that juxtaposition, it's so perfectly used because it's such a juxtaposition between like the gritty, grimy bar and these characters who are just doing awful things and like this archival, fun, bouncy orchestra music. But
now,
it's frustrating.
Something we didn't talk about, I mean, like kind of ties into a little bit of that. It's like they are, I don't know which ones they are. I know one of them, but aren't there like 5 episodes that will never see the light of day again that are canceled off the air in all places?
Yeah. You know what's funny? I mean, we didn't touch on this because like Community had the same thing, or at least we mentioned. Yeah. I think I might have mentioned.
Yeah,
but back in our
we brought it up.
Episode. Yeah, and like one of my favorite episodes was pulled off because there was someone in blackface, or not really blackface. They were dressed up as an elf, but you know, there was a point when I think one show, like someone was like, "Hey, look what they had on that show," and then like Hulu and all the other services were like, "Oh, let's pull look for anything that might be problematic," and just pulled stuff. Keep in mind, I mean, especially if It's Always Sunny, you have episodes that have. Oh
my God, the abortion episode. We started from the beginning and we watched it and it was just like the way that they're talking about abortions and then they go to the it's not great. It's not great. But that's the whole point, right? Like that's the whole point of the show is it's not supposed to be great.
Oh yeah, and the fact is like we're the comedy isn't out of like, when Mac is wearing blackface and trying to pretend to be the character from Lethal Weapon, we're not laughing because he's wearing blackface. We're laughing at him because that's
the gang tries to make Lethal Weapon 6, right? Is it that one?
Yeah,
that one. I know D-Day is also one of them.
Yep, because she was also wearing like one of her Martina Martinez characters, or something else. There's a
Billboard one, I think.
Is that another one that's out there too?
Yeah, the Billboard one and her Shaping American Youth one as well. And the gang recycles their trash. The gang recycles their trash also off all streaming services.
This is why you got to get Blu-rays for this stuff, or if they exist, or at least the DVDs, because
I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere.
But doesn't that always suck too? It's always like the best episodes, like the ones that, like Shaping America's Youth, who, by the way, there's someone who pops up in that episode too. There's so many good guest stars on all these episodes across all these seasons, like actors who pop up in random things. But I will say, which is funny too, because that episode's like sort of a 2-parter. So like you get the first part, but not the second part.
It's like a callback to the underage drinking episode. Remember when they decided they're just going to like serve all the underage kids because they're making a shit ton of money off of them. And they're like, it's better they do it here than somewhere else. And these kids are like fucking 12. Like they're so young.
But apparently, I mean, look, it's the longest running live action sitcom in American history. They have to have that asterisk for live action sitcom because, clearly The Simpsons exists for some reason. I don't know how that show is still like chugging along after all these years, which is insane to me.
They're time travelers. That's how. They're time travelers.
They have predicted a lot of things.
They've predicted a lot of things.
Yeah.
Did you know that Glenn Howerton was considered for our ex-best friend Chris Pratt's role in Jurassic Park?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he was also a contender for his role in Guardians of the Galaxy that Chris Pratt got as well.
Oh, wait a second. Sorry. I thought I heard you say what was it in Parks and Rec? He almost got that role?
No, in Jurassic World.
Jurassic World.
Jurassic World before Chris Pratt. And the same for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay. See, I think I heard about Guardians of the Galaxy. I didn't hear about the Jurassic World. Maybe I heard about the other one. I can't tell.
Fucking Chris Pratt.
But
he just shows up in every episode. This is eventually just going to be a Chris Pratt anti-podcast. I feel like somehow that fucker's in every episode.
Do you know who Glenn is married to?
No.
You don't know this?
I don't think so, no.
So funny enough, she was actually in Community also. A brief role, by the way. I don't want to make it sound like she was like some big character in that show. She's been in a bunch of different shows, but she also popped up on It's Always Sunny as Kaylee, who was the pharmacist in the dentist system.
That's his wife?
That's his wife, yes.
Well, shit.
Yeah.
Were they married since that episode?
I believe, well, they were married since 2009.
Oh,
and
so
she popped up that year too. So, but I think they might have met at the show. So,
look at Always Sunny making it happen for people.
Yeah. So,
I also love that Charlie Day is like up there as like a very prominent voice actor for a lot of animated movies.
Who, Charlie?
Charlie, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, his voice is great.
It is really
so
good
distinctive.
One. My niece loves Monsters University. We have to watch that a lot, and he is a character in there. So.
Is he really?
Yeah, he plays Art.
I didn't know that.
I hear his voice a lot. A whole lot.
Well, funny enough, I didn't know this either, but one of the last fun facts I'll throw out there too is that I listened to the Always Sunny podcast. Very worth listening to. There was a few people that he was involved in theater, like Shakespearean kind of theater, Williamstown Theater Festival every summer that he would do. That's where he met David Hornsby, who is Cricket. Also, some other alum that he worked with was Justin Long, Sterling K. Brown,
very good,
and Jimmy Simpson, who is McPoyle.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
and in Mac's like childhood home in the show, in the episode when Mac bangs Dennis's mom,
yeah,
that's actually Rob McElhenney's aunt and uncle's house in Philadelphia.
Really?
Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah. I love how scrappy the show was, especially in the early seasons.
Oh, hell yeah.
It was just like
so
how
good.
scrappy they put it together. It's so great.
Did you know at the end of every episode, like one of the actors, there's like a voice clip that is played backwards during the credits? I've never been high enough to try and figure that out and listen to it back. But that's one of my favorite fun facts is at the end.
Yeah.
It's played backwards, like real Dark Side of the Moon 1970s. Get high and listen to backwards while watching Wizard of Oz.
Speaking of that, and we'll wrap it up here because we're going on way too long. I apologize for reading off every episode name for apparently 30 minutes. But I will say the other night I had a moment of, speaking of being high, and just was sort of preparing in my brain. We were going to do this episode, and I forgot. I was like, how do they end every episode? Like, if you think about how they end every episode of like Seinfeld, right? It's always like freeze frame and like music, like being. I was like, how does every episode of It's Always Sunny end? I don't remember. And I was like, why can't I remember? Do they end distinctively? Do they just like peter out? Do they cut to the credits? Like, I couldn't remember. I still can't remember. But I was in a weird headspace where I was like, it was making me insane, where I couldn't remember. How do they end? I actually don't know.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Speaking of being high, I think I'm still high from yesterday. So
there you go. Yeah. No idea. If you know how the show ends, we can go watch an episode. But if you know how the show ends, let us know, you know?
Let us know.
Yeah.
Don't do edibles, children.
Yeah. So there you go.
All right.
And by the way, one other thing too, and I don't know, did it ever get released? I'm actually checking right now. Sort of a sad story. I guess it was released. Or wasn't released? I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out as I'm looking here. But there was a movie that Charlie was in that I don't think ever got released.
Oh.
which was a movie called I Love You, Daddy. Does this movie ring a bell?
God, no. No.
Starring Chloe Grace Moretz and John Malkovich and Rose Byrne.
Okay. And it never got released?
It was written and directed by Louis C.K.
Oh, there it is. And
that was the movie that was about to come out, and then suddenly the New York Times article about Louis C.K.
And then
came
suddenly
out and
he's
canceled.
jerking off in front of people. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, not suddenly. He had been doing it for a while.
A long time.
Long time. Anyway, so
Beautiful.
So anyway, so you have that, which is, I mean, also the fact that, anyway, it's directed.
Is there an end in sight though?
For what?
For this show? For the show.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know how long the show has been renewed for. I don't. Yeah, apparently it was renewed for 4 additional seasons in 2020, which will bring it to 18 seasons.
Fuck,
They're filming currently season 16, and so there's still 2 more seasons beyond that. So, and who knows? How do you wrap it up? Also, like, how do you end the show?
I don't know. I don't know how you possibly could. Have you heard the theory? This is a hilarious little tidbit to end this episode on. Have you heard the theory about how the only human is Frank and the rest of them are pets? You have not heard this theory? That Frank's the only human and the gang are all his pets that he's adopted. Charlie's a rat, Dennis is the cat, Max the dog, and Dee is obviously a bird. You haven't heard this?
I haven't. But also, I'll just throw out there too.
It adds up, man.
And there was an episode where he was like, Froggy! And it turned out it was him. He was the frog boy. So, we're not that far off from him having donkey brains. So it could be that he has donkey brains and he thinks all his pets are real people.
If that's how this show ends, that we find out that they're his pets, it's incredible. And they all live in a...
I'll take it.
Yeah, I love it.
Is it still Frank, though? Is Frank still Frank in that theory?
Yeah, he's the human. He's the only human in the whole show.
Okay.
Everything else are pets that he's adopted.
What was Charlie? Charlie was a rat.
Charlie's the rat, yeah.
Okay.
Dennis is a cat, and Max the dog, and Dee's the bird.
I can see it.
Oh.
Yeah, I'll take it. All right. Well,
all right.
I could talk more about it, but I
think we
feel
all
like
could.
this is also another weird one too, where I think originally we were like, let's talk about like a handful of seasons of the show, not the entire series, because it was just going to go on for way too long. And then
which it did, which we knew it would.
Yeah.
But it is, this is coming out our St. Patrick's Day week, and oddly enough, this is all set in Patty's Irish Pub. So happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody!
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Enjoy your pint at Patty's Pub.
See you, everybody.
Bye. That was good.